Cheers. Welcome to The Water Cooler. The Water Cooler is a show about marketing, sales, and technology. Each episode, we focus on bringing you advice that works. Today, I have a very special guest, my man Joey Coleman, who helps companies keep their customers. He's an award-winning speaker. He's going to share his first 100 days methodology for improving your customer experience and retention. He's worked with organizations like Whirlpool, NASA, that one surprised me, Joey, and Zappos. His Wall Street Journal #2, hard thing to do, best-selling book I have right here in front of me, Never Lose a Customer Again, shows you how to turn any sale into a lifelong customer. Joey, welcome to the Water Cooler.
Hey, thanks so much, Jimmy. Appreciate being here.
Well, this is going to be such an amazing show, and it's something that I think everyone who's listening, our audience, our fans, our network, this is a topic that they can't hear enough about, because right now in our industry, like we were talking about offline, there is an obsession with converting leads, and there's very little practical coaching on how to turn those people you actually convert into customers into repeat and referral customers. So I think for me, one of the things I'm excited about is actually getting into the specifics today with you, Joey, about how to actually make that a reality. My first question, just to get it started, because I think this is important for our audience to understand, is help me understand what happens when you get customer experience right at an organizational level.
Well, it's interesting, Jimmy. When you get customer experience right at an organizational level, some amazing things start to happen. Number one, profits go up. Okay, the reason profits go up is because the more we can keep a customer, the longer they stay with us, each incremental dollar they spend with us is more profitable.
Yep.
Right? Number two, the number of total sales goes up, because the happier our customers are, the more they refer their friends and family. So we start to have customers serving as our kind of uncommissioned, non-compensated sales force,
Yep.
bringing qualified leads to us left and right. Additionally, employee morale goes up, because customer experience and employee experience are two sides of the same coin. The more you
Yep.
polish one, the more the other side starts to glow. So what we find is that focusing on experience really has a number of benefits and impacts across the entire organization.
Yeah, and this idea of sort of success begets success, what you're describing, I actually think it's so crazy to hear you say that. One of the people who I really admire is Herb Kelleher, the former CEO of Southwest Airlines, the founder, and he said that, like, my customers are my employees. And what you just touched on reminds me of that, which is if your team can't be happy if they're constantly dealing with negative feedback from your customers. So we know when you run an organization, culture is so important, attitude is so important, positivity is so important. That's really hard to do in the real world when people are angry at you 24/7. So you can give them as much free pizza and beer as you want. If your customers aren't happy, they're having to sort of internalize that. Here's a difficult question to answer, but I want to get your take on it because I think it's so important. How do you know? Because in real estate, let me set this up right. In real estate, Joey, when you go into a listing presentation, if I was your realtor, the first thing I'd mention, if I was a typical realtor, I'd say, Joey, I'm going to deliver a great customer experience for you. I pride myself in great service.
Right.
The reality is we know that's not the case. How do you know? What's a test you can maybe take or give yourself to realize you have a customer experience problem? That maybe you're kind of mediocre at this idea of experience. Because right now, everyone listening might be thinking, I pride myself in delivering great customer experiences and great customer service. I know they're different. We'll talk about that later. But how can one have that sort of moment of truth with themselves?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways. First and foremost, I think every realtor, every business owner, everybody who's kind of responsible for delivering customer experience needs to regularly check in with their clients to see whether they're actually delivering that. And I don't mean just that, hey, on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, how many would you rank us? And by the way, if we get 5 stars, I get a promotion. So please give me 5 stars, which the number of times people say that to me, I'm like, are you kidding me? Just don't stop trying to sway the scores.
Sure.
So I think we need to ask our customers what's going on. Number two, I think it's useful to run a secret shopper through your organization on a regular basis that actually assesses what's going on and gives you objective feedback. Number three, I think it's useful for everyone who wants to be successful in business to have a friend or a colleague, either who's in your industry or even better yet, if they're not in your industry, who you can walk them through your experience and they can give you feedback on whether it's working or not. See,
Mm-hmm.
lots of times we get deluded into thinking we're delivering a remarkable customer experience when the reality is we're not.
Yeah.
I know a lot of times with realtors, and I say this respectfully to the folks watching the video, they compare themselves to other realtors. And when
Mm-hmm.
they do that, it's pretty easy to stand out because most realtors,
Are
not that
terrible.
great. Let's
Yeah.
be candid. They're just not that great. So when you are the leader of the not that great, that's not really something that you should get a prize for, right? I would
Yeah.
ask folks that are watching to compare themselves to Netflix or
Mm.
Amazon or Tesla or Disney. And I know these are big names that we throw around, but when you think of those brands, what do you think of? Well, you think of a seamless experience.
Mm-hmm.
You think of anticipatory experience where they're telling you what you want or what you need before you even ask. They're
Mm-hmm.
thinking of 24/7 responsiveness, right? Are you able to get back to them quickly with exactly what they need and what they want?
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, it's a question of, do you really have an accurate read on what's going on inside your organization? And are you willing to face the hard truths that
Mm-hmm.
there's probably room to improve?
You know what's so fascinating about what you said there, and well, real quickly, for those of you who are tuning in live to the podcast, we're going to give away 10 free copies of Joey's book, Never Lose a Customer Again. All you have to do to actually get a copy of this book is to share this live broadcast in one of your mastermind groups on Facebook, share it on your profile, share it on Instagram, share it on Twitter, help spread the word, because obviously, as you guys know, we take customer experience very seriously here at Curator, and that's why we want to bring Joey Coleman on today's show. We want to get this word out to as many people as possible, so if you guys want to run a free copy of Joey's book, Never Lose a Customer Again, just share this broadcast right now live on the air, and we'll announce the winners at the end of today's broadcast. Joey, what you said there was so fascinating. I think this is something that if you're listening, you probably missed this because it's something that's so counterintuitive. At the end of a sales process in real estate, we always ask for feedback, but we do so in the form of a review. Hey, would you give me a review? But you said something really interesting, which is that's not the same thing as asking for feedback. That's saying, can you help share a positive experience online to help me acquire new customers? Actually conducting a survey of sorts to ask questions about what you could have improved in the process is more what you're leaning towards. And I have a couple questions on the survey side of things, but that's a really important distinction. The other thing you said that's really important, I hope everyone's taking notes here, is you said run someone through the experience. So in real estate, Joey, you have like a couple key moments. The first is the initial point of contact you have with the customer or a prospect. The second is like maybe the listing appointment. The closing, post closing, you have a couple kind of key moments. So like
Sure.
actually having a friend pretend to be a home seller and listen to your agent's listing presentations is a completely insane idea that no one's ever tried in this industry that I think would ultimately result in a much realer sense of how well you're doing with your presentation as an example. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Jimmy, one of the things you mentioned that I think is worth noting, you've got all of those milestones that occur in the relationship.
mm-hmm,
Don't save the survey and the checking in on how things are going till the end. Because here's what happens, especially in a real estate scenario. If I buy a house and I go through all the headache of looking for a house, finding the right house, figuring out the financing,
mm-hmm,
going through the inspection, going through the close, finally getting the key and moving in.
mm-hmm.
And then you ask me how I felt. Well, guess what? I'm going to over index on positive feelings
Yeah.
because it's done.
Yeah.
We've accomplished the goal. I have the house. I'm in the new house. My vision has been realized.
Mm-hmm,
If you ask me in the process, it's going to be a very different answer.
mm-hmm,
I can't believe we're going out yet another weekend to look at houses.
mm-hmm.
How many offers do we have to put in before one will finally get accepted? You'll get a more accurate read of where they are in the emotional journey.
Mm-hmm.
We actually want the kind of feedback that helps us improve.
Yeah.
I understand the benefit of a testimonial that you can post online and will lead you to get new customers. But that's actually not going to improve your business.
Yeah.
It's going to increase your business,
Yeah.
but it's not going to improve your business. If you want to improve your business, you want the honest feedback throughout the customer journey as to which phases or which steps in the process are working and not working.
Yeah.
What do they like and not like? Because that's where we can make the small tweaks and improvements that will dramatically increase the quality of their review at the end,
Mm-hmm.
because it's been a sustained, consistent, remarkable experience.
Is there a survey question that you like to ask that sort of just maybe opens up the floodgates so people are more willing and open to share their actual honest feedback?
Yeah, what I find is that if you ask for very specific things, you'll get very specific answers.
Mm.
See, what most organizations, most realtors, most business people do is they say, "So what did you think of the experience?"
Yeah.
And as humans, most humans don't want to be negative.
Sure.
Most humans want to say, "Well, overall, it worked well. Thanks for your time."
Yeah.
That's useless.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, what I like to do is a variation of two themes. I either do the stop, start, continue, or I do the count them down. Let me explain each one. Stop, start, continue is a 3-question survey. Question number 1: what did we do in this process of working with you as a customer that we should stop doing?
Mm-hmm.
What did we do in this relationship with you as a customer that we should start doing? We didn't do it, but we
Mm-hmm.
should start doing. And last but not least, what did we do in our relationship that you liked that we should continue doing? So
Yeah.
stop, start, continue. The other option is to count it down. Specifically say, what were the 3 things you liked best about working with me?
Mm-hmm.
Next question. What were the 2 things that you wish would have been different?
Mm-hmm.
Last but not least, what is the one thing that you will remember about working with me a year from now?
Yeah.
That really helps you to get specific answers. And if you call out the numbers, they'll think, oh, I need to give them 2 negatives. I need to give them 3 positives. I need to give them 1 memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're helping the brain to focus in and give you exactly the kind of feedback and information that you can use to improve your business.
And the marketing side of me, Joey, when I hear that advice, I think of what Melanie Diesel told us last week when she was on the podcast. She said, being able to take stats and turn them into stories. And when I hear you sort of pull that information out of the customers, you get the customer's voice, if you will, it sort of lays the groundwork for telling a better story, whether that's internally to coach your team to say, hey, this is like, as opposed to saying we need to deliver a better customer experience, you can point very specifically to what they're saying about what you're doing and make an incremental improvement on that. So
Absolutely.
I just think about the marketing impact of like, what Melanie was saying last week.
Yeah. Well, 2 things, if I may, Jimmy. Number
Sure.
1, it's always better to have your story be told by a customer than by you. Always. Every single time.
Yeah.
So if your customer is saying, this is what's great about working with you, or this is what needs to be improved about working with you, that data, that feedback is always more accurate and richer than our preconceived notions we develop in our own minds.
Yeah.
Additionally, when it comes to employees, let me make an observation, if I may. It is impossible to ask our staff, our teams, our employees to deliver remarkable customer experiences if they don't know what one is.
Mm.
Here's the thing. Most of the successful, super successful realtors have flown first class, have stayed in the really nice hotel, have eaten at the Michelin-starred restaurant, right? They've had these life experiences of luxury.
Yeah.
So when they think of, we want to deliver a Ritz-Carlton first class, white glove, Louis Vuitton experience, they have a context for what that means. Most of their support staff doesn't. Most of the support staff is bringing their lunch to work. Most of the support staff has only ever flown in the middle seat in the back row of the plane,
Yeah.
right? So we need to, as leaders, think about the people we're working with and create opportunities for them to have remarkable experiences so that when we ask them to deliver those remarkable experiences, they understand what we're asking them to do.
Yeah, it's a wonderful observation when you really think deeply about what you said there, because what comes to my mind is one of the best ways for a business to get better is to model itself after someone it aspires to be like. And it's the most tangible way for it to become real, especially in experience where it's in the service space. We're not delivering a physical product per se. It's even slightly more challenging, right? In the restaurant business, you wipe the plates clean before you serve them. And that there isn't that kind of moment of like visual reinforcement that goes along with delivering a great experience when you're in the services space. At what point do you fire a customer, Joey?
At what point? I think every business should fire customers on a regular basis,
Hmm.
because bad customers or customers that aren't in alignment with your mission and your vision of what you want your business to be are going to creep in no matter what you do.
Hmm.
I think there's a couple opportunities to do it. Number one, anytime that a customer is abusive or disrespectful to your staff,
Yeah.
it's a huge opportunity immediately. And the reason I say that, and some people watching are probably saying, well, duh, that's kind of an obvious one, Joey. Well, the behavior of most organizations is not that obvious.
Yeah.
Okay. The typical organization I go into, one of the exercises I'll do is if they have repeat customers, I'll ask them to make a list of the top 3 worst customers
Yeah.
and submit that list anonymously. Then we put all the data together and we find that they all think that the same customer is the worst customer, right? And then I
Yeah.
go to the management team and I say, we need to fire this customer
Hmm.
because it is corrupting the morale of
Yeah.
your
And
employees.
what do they say?
But, well, one of the requirements of working with me is you have to be open to these conversations, right? I'm not saying you have to do it,
Yeah.
but when I ask them in front of their entire team, which I tell them I'm going to do, I
Yeah.
don't tell them who the client's going to be, but I'll say, I may say things in front of your entire team that hold the fire to your feet a little bit.
Hmm.
As a general rule, it all works out. And what we found is when we do that, the employees feel such a sense of motivation. They feel such a sense of being heard, which
Hmm.
is really, at the end of the day, the prime goal of every human on the planet. We
Hmm.
just want to feel heard.
Hmm.
That's it. We want to feel loved. We want to feel respected. We want to feel heard. Once they feel heard, they will rise to the occasion to increase profitability, to find new customers, to maximize the relationship with the other clients that are
Hmm.
still there.
Hmm.
So I think that's a good opportunity for culling the herd, if you will, or eliminating some of the customers that might have creeped into your organization.
Yeah, and what you are reinforcing for me, Joey, as I listen to you say that, is like you cannot deliver a great customer experience with disgruntled or disenfranchised employees. So by having, for lack of a better way of saying it, a sacrificial lamb, which is
Yeah,
some jerk who is never going to be happy, it sends a message to the entire organization that we've got your back. We're not going to
exactly.
put you in a position where you're having to deal with people who are completely unreasonable. In reality, that's a tough thing to do. That is
Oh,
a,
I get it. I get
it's
that
like
it's hard. And
I'm just thinking about what customers I want to fire right now, and I'm like,
sure.
yeah. But the thing is, it's funny as the guy running Curator, I'm like, I almost want to sort of like, I'm not. It's not front and center for me. I'm not dealing with customers every day in context, right? And I've
Yeah.
got a great relationship with so many of our customers that, it's one of those things where it's hard for me to maybe empathize with them because I've kind of gone through that. But my natural instincts, for better or worse, is like, is it something that we are doing wrong? That's kind of my natural instincts,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Well, here's the interesting thing. I understand as a business leader, as a CEO, the instinct is we want to please our customers, right? Because
Yeah.
here's the thing. We remember what it was like when we started,
Mm-hmm.
when there was one of us, two of
Mm-hmm.
us, right?
Sure.
And every customer mattered, and we were holding them in the palm of our hand, and we were willing to kind of put up with some stuff that we shouldn't have
Yeah.
because we needed to keep the lights on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is most businesses keep that mentality long past when it's due.
Mm-hmm.
And they continue to do that. Additionally, it's one of the reasons why I think leadership teams need to be in very close and consistent and regular contact with the frontline staff members, because often an abusive client will treat the CEO or the leader beautifully
Yeah. Sure.
and treat the staff poorly.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a real opportunity to check in and you make it clear. What I usually like to do is the first time it happens, they go on notice.
Mm-hmm.
I call them and I say, hey, it's my understanding that the conversation went down this way.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it went down? And get their opinion as well. And then
Yeah.
say, look, here's the deal. We only work with folks that are interested in remarkable experiences, and we want remarkable experiences for our team as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not going to be able to deliver on that, we're not a good fit. Consider this the first warning, and there will be only one warning, that we need to all come to the table with our best foot forward. Because,
Mm-hmm.
see, here's the thing, Jimmy. Some people, and I hate to say this, but it's what I've learned over the years just studying the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are just happy being unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say that, and I don't mean that to be judgmental or critical. It is the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is when those people creep into your organization, either as customers or employees,
Yeah.
it starts to infect everyone else.
Yeah.
And our job as leaders is to cut that out, to excise that from the business
Mm-hmm.
so that a small singular person's behavior
Yeah.
doesn't turn into a tidal wave that sweeps across the entire organization.
No, I'm with you. I'm gonna internalize that. What's the most difficult part of customer experience that you think that even the pros get wrong? The part you see kind of most people get hung up on. So even companies who have that sort of mentality where they're all in, they're making the right investments in this process, they're collecting surveys, they're getting feedback, they're firing crappy customers. What's the part of the process you find that most companies, even good ones, get wrong?
I would say there's two things that most companies miss. First and foremost, they're very familiar with their business operations
Mm-hmm.
and the sequence of events and how things work. They consistently either under explain that to their customers
Mm-hmm.
or overwhelm their customers,
Mm.
right? So by under explain, it's this attitude of, well, Joey, we wrote in the proposal what we were going to do and kind of what the steps of the process were going to be. They just need to follow the proposal.
Yeah.
Well, folks, you sign stuff that you don't read all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. I say this as a recovering attorney. All right. People sign things without reading them
Sure.
all the time. And if you doubt the validity of that statement, I ask you to just consider the last time you rented a car
Mm-hmm.
and you're standing in line and you finally get to the front. They've got that little box and you're just clicking I accept.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it's going out of style without reading any of the text
Mm-hmm.
that you're clicking on. Right. So I think we need to remind our customers where they are in the process and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I think companies overwhelm their customers
Mm.
right out of the gates. See, lots of times, and I see this more with small to mid-sized businesses, there's such a desire to prove the value
Yeah.
that we overwhelm the customer with the communications, right? So in a real estate example, this might be, well, because I want to show you that I'm a great realtor and I understand everything, we're going to go see 15 houses on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good, it's too much. It's overwhelming. Prove your value by being a curator, no pun intended, right?
We'll take it.
Prove your value by saying, you hired me
Mm-hmm.
to find exactly what you want. You know, here's the crazy thing about real estate. Real estate has been greatly benefited and greatly cursed by HGTV.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And here's my opinion why that's happened. You go on one of these house hunter type shows and you say, my budget is $500,000 and I'm looking for a 3-bedroom house. And then they go to the first house and it's an $800,000
Mm-hmm.
7-bedroom house. And I'm sitting watching going, that's not even close. It's not in budget. It's not what we're asking. And they're like, oh, but you need to understand, you need to up the fee. And a lot of realtors think that way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of realtors think if I can get you to spend more money on a bigger house, my commission goes up. The problem with that being the opening volley is what it actually says is, I don't care what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you what I want to sell you.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I think, a pervasive problem in the real estate community. Now, in respect to the realtors, I totally understand that lots of times the folks who come to you because they've been watching HGTV
Mm-hmm.
have a false sense of reality of what's in the marketplace. Well, I have $200,000 and I want a 7-bedroom McMansion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, you're not getting that. I'm sorry. And that might mean we have to say no to working with you if you have unreasonable expectations.
What's the best way to say no to a customer if you're going to keep them long term? Let's say it's a good fit, right? I mean, like good fit, you want to work with the customer, but they're just pushing the boundaries too far. This is something that I think everyone, like I'll give you an example on real estate.
Sure.
Like they'll call them at 8 o'clock at night on a Friday, wanting to see something at 9 in the morning on Saturday, regardless of any other customers they have working with. Like they're sort of put in the pressure. It's funny. Steve Smith, who heads up marketing communication at Curator, he lives in San Diego, and he was at he's one of our clients. The Selby's actually sell real estate there in San Diego, and he saw one of their signs for an open house. So he walks into the open house, and there is one of the Selby's sitting there on the couch hosting an open house for this customer. Now she knows this open house is not really going to help sell the property. The price is going to sell the property. She knows that she's just basically appeasing the customer, and she's kind of come to terms with that in a certain degree. How do you, as a professional who cares about delivering a great experience, say no the right way? Because that's
Sure.
something every single person on this call, like, they need to hear this because it's going to make their life a lot better. Like, right as soon as we hang up this podcast, they're going to immediately begin to put this into practice.
Yeah, couple things. Number one, often the best way to say no to a customer is to actually use the word no,
Mm,
just to say it. Because lots of times we dance around it. We say, well, under the circumstance, but it's easier sometimes to just say, I'm not going to do that. And here's why.
sure.
It's not that I want to disrespect your request. It's that I think you're actually asking for something that isn't going to serve you long term. See, I've been doing this for 20 years. And what I've learned over the course of the 20 years is that if we have an open house at this point in the process, yes, we're going to have a lot of people traipse through the house. Yes, you're going to get to see things happening.
Mhm.
But the reality is 98% of the sales in this neighborhood come from realtor to realtor relationships,
Mhm.
come from specific showings, come from, things that are less about what is the fanfare for the public to see
Yeah.
and more about what are the personal relationships. When you
Mhm.
hired me, that's what you hired me for. And here are the 5 calls, the 5 private tours that I'm going to do next week
Mhm.
when you're not there
Mhm.
that are actually going to result in some offers.
Yeah.
So you guide them. That's what happens in the process. But let's wind it back to the beginning.
Sure.
I think it's all about pre-framing the customer
Mhm.
as to what they can expect.
Mm.
I'm a big believer in differentiating yourself from the marketplace by explaining how you do things differently.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would be as simple as to saying, look, if a big open house party where we invite a ton of people to come to your house and you can invite your friends to kind of see your house all decked out and staged and looking amazing is what you're looking for, I'm the wrong realtor for you.
Mhm.
Happy to recommend some folks that totally love that and
Yeah.
will take great care of you. But the moral of the story is I represent people that actually want to get the best possible offer for their home and they want a quick close with a qualified buyer.
Mhm.
So that kind of person comes in a different format than an open house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's make sure that we're all on the same page at the beginning. And sometimes I'll even have the clients sign that they understand that.
Mm.
I've had clients, for example, I'm a speaker. I spend 2 to 3 weeks out of every month on the road giving speeches around the world, and I
Mhm.
absolutely love it. Occasionally, a client will want me, for whatever scheduling reason, to fly to their event on the day of the speech,
Mhm.
as opposed to flying the day before.
Mhm.
Now, you and I have both spent, and I'm sure most of our listeners have spent enough time on airplanes to know that you are without control when
Mhm.
you get on an airplane,
Mhm.
right? Delays, inconsistencies, bump flights, all kinds of things can start to affect. So I actually make my clients sign a separate one-page contract that says, you understand that Joey's flying in the day of. You understand that it's completely beyond both of our control. And you understand that there is a good possibility
Yeah.
that I will not be there for the speech.
Mhm.
If you're okay with all of that
Mhm.
and you sign this paper, I'm willing to roll the dice. I'm willing
Yeah.
to give it a try and see if we can make it work. But if you're not willing to attest to that,
Yeah.
to admit that you understand the consequences of your choice, it's never going to be a good relationship for
Yeah.
us.
It's in the idea of, well, first off, I'm sure most of them fly you in the night before after seeing that contract. But
Yeah,
it's what comes to my mind is this idea of pre-framing, and I've heard this explained in a couple of different ways. Like Robert Cialdini wrote that book Persuasion, right? And the
yeah,
example I've given before is that if you're in an interview, and let's say you were interviewing me, Joey, for a job that I really wanted, and there was saying this job was super competitive, and there's 10 other people who are more qualified than I was, who have college degrees and have work experience, I may say something like, "Hey, Joey, what was it about my resume that attracted you to me?" As a way to sort
right.
of frame the conversation in the right
Totally,
direction. And what you're saying
totally.
pre-framing is, if you really study customer experience, you're going to realize there's always going to be the same hiccups in the experience that if you can set up in advance, that can actually help prevent that from being a difficult moment in the future. One example that comes to my mind, Joey, is price reductions. It is
Sure,
probably the thing that agents stress out about more than anything else. Is they're saying to
totally.
themselves like, "Shit, I gotta talk to this customer about getting a price reduction. They're not going to be happy. It's going to make me look bad. I know it will sell the house." And what you're saying is, in this particular case, if they actually had the price reduction conversation way before they needed to have the price reduction conversation,
Before you sign that client,
yeah, Okay.
Okay, I agree. Forgive me for interrupting, but I'm so passionate about this.
Sure.
We need to bring forward the experience nightmares into the sales process.
Mm.
This is what I mean by that. If we know that a price reduction is going to be an issue, we address that in the first meeting.
Mm.
And we say, look, here's the deal. Let's talk price. Before you answer this question, I know you have in your mind a number that you want to get for your house. Now, here's what all my experience tells me is that number, with all due respect, is not based on the comps in the neighborhood, is not based on what similar styled homes around the city have sold for. It is based on how much money you feel you deserve to make or want to make,
Sure.
and how much you want to be able to buy your next house with. Now, there is nothing wrong with you having that thought. Where we run into a challenge is when you become so locked with that thought that you end up sitting on an opportunity to sell your house and being stuck in your current house for a long time. So here's what I want us to agree to. I want us to agree to the fact that we're going to work together to come up with a number that not only is as close as possible to the number that's sitting in your head right now, but that is reasonable for the marketplace that we think will actually get us some offers and get the house sold. Now, we're going to put our best foot forward and put that out. And within 2 weeks or 1 week or a month or whatever it is in your jurisdiction, right? This is where, as the realtor, you need to know your marketplace. We're going to know whether our guess was accurate. And if our guess wasn't accurate, I want your commitment today that you're going to be open to a conversation where we reduce the price by somewhere between 5 and 8%, or whatever the number is.
Sure.
Give them the pre-frame for what it's going to be,
Yeah.
so that when you come back and you say, we need to cut 5% off, and they go, well, I never agreed to that. You say, actually, remember our very first conversation?
Yeah.
When I said it would be between 5 and 8% if we missed, that's where we're at. It's your choice, but that's where we're at.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge opportunity. You know, I used to design logos for a living. Okay. And one of the things I would say in the very first conversation is there's going to be a phrase that if it ever comes out of your mouth, I'm going to know we're having a problem.
Is it make the logo bigger?
Yeah, no, close. Make it bigger is a good one. No, I'll know it when I see it. If you say, I'll know it when I see it,
Sure.
At any point in this process, what that tells me is that I have failed to properly understand what you're trying to get.
Yeah.
And you have failed to properly explain it to me. So I don't want to say that if you say that, you're fired. Yeah. But what I am going to say is if that ever comes out in our conversations, that's a 3-alarm fire.
Sure.
That's a stop the presses moment. That's a whoa. We've got to completely reevaluate the relationship, where we're at, and what we're trying to create. In the real estate world, there are phrases and scenarios like that. Talk about those in the beginning. Talk about, if you're representing buyers, talk about the emotion of the offer not being accepted. Okay? It's going to happen.
Yeah.
If you're writing offers, you're going to have offers that aren't accepted. Talk about what that's like before they're in the pain of feeling it. Say, here's the deal. When we put together our best offer, it's probably not going to be accepted. There's going to be a counteroffer. Now, when it comes to the counteroffer, there are a couple things we can do. We can increase the amount we're going to pay. We can decrease the amount of time we're going to have to close. We can waive inspections. There are all sorts of things we can do. Let's talk about the ones you're most excited about before we're in the offer situation.
Yeah.
So that we understand which of those levers are going to be the easiest ones for us to move as it relates to you.
Yeah. How do you find that balance? Because I love the advice here, because I think it's so practical as it relates to, funny, we just published our first book with collaboration with Phil M. Jones, Exactly What to Say for Real Estate.
Yeah, that guy's sketchy. That's a sketchy. I'm
is
just
super
kidding,
sketchy.
everyone. Phil Jones is a great friend of mine. The guy is brilliant. Go buy the book. Like, seriously, make no hesitation. I am not not I get no royalties from this plug.
Yeah.
If Phil Jones is saying it,
Mm-hmm.
you want to be listening.
That is
Period.
that is
And the
that.
fact that he's created a book for realtors,
Yeah.
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I want to read the book, and I'm not even a realtor.
Well,
Okay?
you're starting to
'Cause I
sound like
know I'm
one
gonna
as we're
learn.
going through this conversation, Joey. I'm actually pretty sold on helping you help me sell my house. But let me ask the question, because I think it's funny, because we brought everyone here in the Boston office, and we had maybe 15, 10 agents here, and we went into a deep dive about, like, hey, talk to us about the common, critical, and difficult conversations you have every day. And I was expecting the vast majority of them would talk about the early stage of the process, which is converting leads into new business. And 90% of the conversation was the difficult conversations they have with existing customers. My question is how does one balance? Because if a salesperson walks into the room and says, hey, Jimmy, here's the 12 things that are going to go wrong with this process that I want you to be aware of, like, at a certain point, I'm like, is anything going to go right? Like, isn't it your job for me not to worry about this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
so help me understand, like, what's the difference between pre-framing and then coming in there and just saying, like, the world is ending and the apocalypse is happening right now. Would you like to hire me? Like, because that's kind of in my mind, that's that balance. I think some people are going to struggle to find that right fit, if you will.
Yeah, no, Jimmy, it's a great concern, and it's a genuine concern, right? This happens. Couple thoughts. Number one, your job in a sales meeting, if you're a realtor, if you're any type of business person, is to build rapport as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
The sooner you can build rapport, the sooner your prospective client or customer will open up as to what's actually going on in their mind.
Mm.
I think there's a huge opportunity in that first meeting to say, so everyone I've ever worked with has had some concerns about buying a house or about selling a house
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't talk about until later in the process. And what I've learned over the 20 years I've been doing this
Mm-hmm.
is that the sooner I know what your concerns are,
Yeah.
the better I can address them and the better I can move them. So let me throw out a couple that might be concerns.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me if any of those hit, and then you tell me what other ones you have.
Yeah.
So you might have a concern about a price reduction after we list your house.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a concern about the fact that you need to move in the next 5 months, and what happens if the house doesn't sell by
Mm-hmm.
then. You might have a concern about the inspection.
Yeah.
These are a couple of things that come. What are other things that you might be concerned about?
Mm-hmm.
See, you went first, you being the realtor. Lots of times, the law of reciprocity tells us that when we go first, as human beings, our counterpart is compelled to respond
Mm-hmm.
and to share what's going on for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some customers may say, well, actually, those are it, and I don't have any more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they lie about other things too, and you're going to have to build more rapport and coax it out of them
Yeah.
over time. But if they say, well, those are them, well, then you address those.
Mm-hmm.
I think you probably want to identify in that first meeting the 2 or 3 biggest things that can go wrong, not 12 things.
Sure.
The 2 or 3 biggest things, but then explain how by talking about them now,
Mm-hmm.
you're avoiding it being an issue later.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like telling a child that the stove is hot, right? The child's going to eventually touch the stove.
Mm-hmm.
We, as parents, we don't want that. As people that care about children, we don't want that, but we know it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not to sound condescending to the clients buying or selling a house, but the realtor knows, as much as they tell them, we might have to have a price reduction
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to like it. When it comes time to the price reduction, they're not going to like it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the reality. There's no amount of pre-framing that can eliminate the emotion. What we can do is turn down the temperature on it.
Mm-hmm.
We can turn down the significance that it has and the impact it has by being able to reference back to, remember when we had that conversation when we were all happy and go lucky about the possibility of working together,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody was seeing the rainbows and the sunshine and feeling good? Well, now that we're in the thick of it and it doesn't feel as good, I want us to teleport back to that time and remember the conversation we had about price reductions then. That's the way to connect it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal advice, Joey. And I think, and I'm hoping people are internalizing this and having their own spin on it. But I think what you're saying is, and this is the part that I'm really trying to get at, is that I work with so many clients who spend so much time worrying about things they really can't control that prevents them from doing the real work to help grow their businesses. And that stress and that anxiety that keeps them up at night, what you're really saying through this conversation is, if you're looking to deliver a great customer experience, a lot of the things that you struggle with every day can be avoided through this concept of pre-framing. I want to ask you a question about modeling your business after the best in the world. Something that I'm really passionate about is I'm always stealing ideas from everyone at all times, no matter what. If I see something out there that I like, I try to grab a hold of it and apply it to what I do every single day. So famously, Steve Jobs hired, I believe the gentleman's name was Mickey Drexel. He was the king of retail. He hired him to bring him on board to help with the concept of the original Apple Store. And if I'm correct still, the actual revenue per square foot, the Apple Store is like the highest in the world, or at least it's in the top 5. And so I remember that he brought in Mickey Drexel because Mickey Drexel was the person who popularized and made Gap a household name. He's the person who turned Gap in from the 90s into an absolute monster of a retailer. So now, if you go in any retail store, like Apple is now the bar, okay? And so, like, even I went to the Microsoft store many years ago, and it's like a kind of a ripoff of Apple. And the point
100%. Yeah. Anybody that goes into the Microsoft store goes, it's the Apple store with Microsoft stuff, not executed as well.
With less people.
Sorry. So that's the reality of the retail setting. And I don't mean that to be critical of Microsoft, but this is what happens when we model our competition instead of pulling ideas from other industries, as you would suggest, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I am a huge, huge fan of paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the world and pulling those ideas to your business. See, here's the interesting thing. So many people, and this probably applies to a lot of the people watching our live cast here, and so forgive me if this sounds ageist, but you grew up in the Apple computer store, so you think that's the norm. Right? For those of us like me that are a little bit older, I remember going to the Radio Shack computer store, which basically looked like a technology supply closet. Okay. There was no merchandising. There was no clean space. Every square inch was used to display product. Now, at the time, there was nothing wrong with that. That's how you sold technology. Then Steve Jobs comes along and Drexel, and they say, well, what if we made it like what happens when you go into a high-end store to buy a luxury purse, where there's maybe only 4 items displayed, and there's a lot of white space, and there's soft music playing, and it feels elegant and aesthetically pleasing, instead of, here's how much RAM we have, here's the speed of our processor, look at the shiny metal. What that did is it created space to breathe. So the parallel to the real estate world and to realtors is to say, don't compare yourself to the other realtors in your jurisdiction. Compare yourself to the industry leaders across all industries. What are they doing?
Yeah, is there a specific industry you see would be a good model? Like ones that you say, okay, that don't sell real estate or not in services, like that we should be paying attention to? Because you're out there in the world talking to so many different businesses out there. Like, who should we be paying close attention to right now, would you say?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, I would say pay attention to the brands that your clients are dealing with and that they love first. And then as you get more skilled in this, then you pay attention to all of them. I can't walk into a business today or have an interaction with a brand without gleaning 1 or 2 ideas that could be applied to all the rest of my clients that aren't in that industry, right? But I've built that observational skill and investigatory skill over time. What you might want to do is look at what it is that customers are looking for today. So one of the keynotes that I give, I talk about the changing face of the customer. And it talks about how customer expectations have evolved, particularly over the last decade. Now all customers are expecting 4 things: familiarity, anticipation, convenience, and experience, an acronym that spells FACE. Familiarity. We want to believe that the brands we're doing business with know us as well as we know ourselves or better. How does this apply to a realtor? If you're going to meet with a new client or a new prospect and you want to sign them as a client and go show them some homes, prior to the meeting, go on their Facebook page and see what they're interested in. See the type of things they like and post about. See what their hobbies, their desires are. That way you have some understanding of what actually makes them tick. Number two, anticipation.
Hmm.
We love brands that figure out what we want and need before we even know it.
Yeah.
So what are you doing as a realtor to anticipate where they're actually going? Do you want to have the conversation with the young couple that has one child that you think, based on the conversation, is going to want three children, about the benefits of buying the house that can hold the three children, even though they're not even pregnant with the second child
Hmm.
yet, so that they don't have to move between child 2 and 3. Now, financially, they may not be in a position to do that, but they're going to appreciate the anticipatory conversation.
Hmm.
Number three, convenience. What are we doing to make this super easy? Okay. I'm a big believer that most realtors are dialing it in.
Hmm.
Most realtors are making it convenient to them, not convenient to their clients. So, are we jumping into your car to drive around? Do you have food and snacks that I like because you've done the research to figure out what I want to have it in the car? Are you giving me a printout of all the homes we're going to go see with an area that I can take notes on? Or is it just kind of spray and pray? Let's see what's open houses
Hmm.
available today. How are we making it as convenient as possible? And last but not least, number four, the experience. How are we making them feel?
Yeah.
When they interact with you, it's not enough to sell them a house.
Hmm.
It's not enough to sell their house. It's about how they feel throughout the process. So when we look to other brands, like Facebook is really good on familiarity.
Yeah.
Amazon is really good on anticipation,
Yeah.
right? Convenience is really modeled by Netflix, right?
Hmm.
And the way they make it super easy to find the next show you want to watch. Experience is brilliantly done by Disney. You can't step into the Magic Kingdom without feeling a magical experience.
Hmm.
None of those businesses are realtors, but all of them have things we can learn from.
Yeah, and I think the idea of starting with brands that you love. The reason I was laughing, by the way, is I was thinking about how horrible of a client you would be if I was a realtor trying to sell you a house. Because I feel like you'd get in my car and be like, "Why? There's no organic snacks here, Jimmy." Like
But
you would fall in that category of clients I would fire. But
here's the thing. It's funny. My wife always jokes with me. She's like, the speeches and the books write themselves, right?
sure.
Because everywhere I go, I'm seeing opportunities. But here's the thing. The bar for customer experience is lying on the ground.
Hmm.
It is literally on the
That's
ground.
one of the
You
things
are,
I wrote down, which is stop comparing yourself to the lowest common denominator.
yeah.
It's one of those things that
All
jumps
you
out to me.
have to do is something a little better. Why was Uber so much more impressive than
Because the
taxis?
taxis were awful. They're still awful
Because
here in
the
Boston.
taxis were miserable. They
Yeah,
were horrible. The climate was horrible. The smells were horrible. They didn't care about you. Now you get into an Uber, they have a water. They have a mint.
yeah,
They have a charger for your phone. They actually say hi. It doesn't smell like whatever they ate for lunch.
yeah,
They're huge benefits. And why is that? Because they know they want to get the 5-star review,
hmm, yeah.
right? What do we do as customers in an Uber or in a Lyft? We behave because we know they're scoring us. And as a
What
rider,
is
we want
Joey Coleman's Uber score? That's a question that's going through my
Joey
mind. Right.
Coleman's Uber score. Thankfully, my Uber score, last time I checked, it was about a 4.87, which is really interesting because as a customer experience guy, I'd love it to be a 5. But I also recognize that when we deal with humans, there's nuance.
Hmm.
I have no idea why they scored me the way they scored me, but clearly some people
Didn't
didn't
like you.
think that the Joey passenger experience was remarkable. So what do I do now? When I get in, if I have to make a phone call, I will actually say to the driver,
Sure,
pretending you're the driver, "Excuse me, Jimmy, I have to make a last minute emergency call to one of my clients.
sure.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be rude. Is it okay with you if I make a quick call from the back of your car?"
Mm, okay.
No one ever says no.
Sure, sure. So,
But the fact that they say yes allows me to pre-frame them that a thing that they might not be super excited about is about to happen, but don't change my 5-star score at the end.
I was about to talk trash to you, but I realized I have a lower rating than you, which is surprising. I'm a 4.76. I've been working on that, by the way, because I used to be like a 4.6, and I don't know how I got
You've
that
been
rating.
improving it.
I've been working on it. Well, and then talk about one of the things that you said there was so interesting about the face analogy was anticipating their needs. And the thing that Uber does, and it might fall into experience, it might fall into anticipation, but when you book an Uber now, it says, what is your preference for the conversation, right? It's like, do you want them not to talk to you? Do you want them to have a conversation, ask you your life story? And it actually is like, yeah, you know what? It's been a long day. I don't really want to talk to this person. Like, I just want to get from point A to point B. And I want us to be cool about it. I don't want to be awkward where I'm like kind of cutting this person off. So that's a good example of sort of thinking one step ahead of what a customer might want. And as you were saying earlier, anticipate their needs. So I love that idea.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jimmy. It's also a great example of the second piece of a puzzle that when you asked the question earlier, where do most companies miss?
Mm-hmm.
And I said they miss in kind of that acclimating their customers to their way of doing business. The other place most places miss is they don't continue to focus on incremental improvements over time.
Mm-hmm.
They build out the customer experience and they think it's good. They don't come in and spot check it, nor do they continue to enhance it over the years. We've all been into a restaurant before that is a well-ranked restaurant that maybe was the shining darling back in the day that has grown a little long in the tooth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you get in and you're like, it's a little shabby. It's not quite what it used to be.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because they didn't continue to improve and iterate. What Uber has done by asking those questions that didn't used to be in the app, they didn't used to ask you that. They've realized that there's a problem. And that problem is the Uber drivers and the customers are both trying to create positive interactions.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways you can score a driver is a great conversationalist. So the driver feels, well, I'm being incentivized on my conversation, therefore I need to talk to you. That creates a difficult challenge for the person who doesn't want to talk or is maybe introverted or maybe just had a long day.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. The opportunity to continue to ask our customers what we can do to make the experience better is what keeps us improving. It's also the case that we don't want to rest on our laurels.
Mm-hmm.
See, as the relationship with a potential buyer or seller of a home continues, we're going to, because we're human, fall back on, well, I already made, checked in to see what kind of drink they like.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's the only drink they're going to like in the future. So I'm only going to offer them that
Mm-hmm.
without recognizing that instead you could say, hey, I know you really like this, but just in case today you're feeling that you'd like something else, I also have these three other
Mm-hmm.
options.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that they're a human that might change their opinion is a great way to let a customer know you think of them individually and personally, as opposed to here's my system for operating. And once you're in the system, there's no way for us to nuance it or adjust it to make it better.
There's a restaurant here in Boston called Tate's, and they got good food. But one of the things that really annoys me is they never do any modifications. And I'm like the king of modifications. I like to add avocado to everything, right? Add bacon to everything, whatever that might be. So like
Right.
it's one of the things that really annoys me because I think one of the things that from a customer perspective, and I'd like you to speak to this, like I don't know why they don't let me do it. And so like like they do something a certain way and it kind of defies logic, meaning so I think there are things internally within our business that we have operationalized because of a decision we made many years ago or many months ago. So we're doing things a certain way without having that logic behind it. And what happens is the customer experiences it as this sort of like them just being unwilling to change. Like, do you see that happening with businesses where like the operations dictates the experience and it has sort of this unintentional negative consequence?
Only all day, every day, Jimmy. Literally all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
So one that really drives me insane is the fact that there's still some companies that require me to fax a signature.
Sure.
I'm like, I saw this great thing online the other day. It said, we just need you to fax that in. And the person replied, said, oh, I can't do that from my current location. The other person replied and they said, well, where are you? And the person replied and said, 2019. That's my current location. There's stop it. Stop this behavior, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity, and this goes back to that consistent improvement, to regularly run someone through your operation,
Yeah.
looking for the things you do that just don't make sense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, I have no judgment in this. This is the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, my grandmother passed away. And the following year at Thanksgiving, we were making we were all together for the holidays, and it wasn't Thanksgiving dinner, but it was another dinner, and we were making a pot roast. And my mom and my aunt, my grandmother's two children, were there, and it was the first time they'd made the roast without grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And they took the roast and they cut the ends off the roast, and then they put it in the pan. And I said, why did you cut the ends off the roast? And they looked at each other and they started laughing and then started crying and then started laughing again. And they said, we have no idea.
Mm.
Mom always did it that way. Well, I ended up tracking down one of my great aunts and found out that my grandmother had a small pan.
Mm.
And that's why she cut the ends off the roast. It had nothing to do with the taste of the roast. It had nothing to do with what was
Mm.
being prepared. It
Yeah.
was that her oven and her pan was not big enough for the typical roast she got.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the thing that we have adopted as an operational system made sense, made perfect sense,
Mm-hmm.
but our perpetuating of that behavior is insane.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is check and see what are the things we're asking our customers to do that just don't make sense.
Yeah.
Why do we ask them to come to our office if instead we could do a Zoom call?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we insist on always seeing 3 houses when it might be the case that there's only 2 to go see? Why do we always insist on having an open house when we know that it doesn't necessarily work as well as it used to?
Yeah.
There are different things that we can be doing to say, let's challenge the assumptions within our business, within our industry, to see if they're actually valid anymore.
That operational debt that you're talking about, the small pan syndrome, right?
Yeah.
That operational debt is what takes an innovative company that's able to gain market share in any business and then turns them into the old guard. And that's something that is so important for everyone here to understand, because as you were saying that, it's something that one of my mentors, Tom Peters here in Boston, a mentor from afar. I just read his books early when I was young in my career. He always used to say, like, we need to have someone's job dedicated to cutting red tape. You talk about this idea of someone's main job in an organization is to remove the dumb ideas that were smart at one point but have become irrelevant and remove them from the organization. We've got bigger pans now. Stop cutting the ends off the roast, right?
100%. Reduce the friction. Look
Yeah.
at all the areas in your business that are creating friction. Why? It goes back to that FACE acronym, because your customers in 2019 and in 2020 and in beyond are over-indexing on their desire for convenience.
Yeah.
It used to be we put up with this stuff. It
Mhm.
used to be it'd be like, oh, okay, I'll jump through the hoops do.
When there were less options. Yeah.
Yeah, now we're like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? I'm going
Mm.
to go online and write a review about how dumb this is, right? The consequences of not addressing your red tape, of not reducing your friction, of not assessing which operational things you have in process that benefit you but are a detriment to your customer.
Mhm.
The cost of those things is more significant today than at any other time in human history.
One of the things that's an existential threat to real estate is the introduction of these technology companies coming in there trying to replace their jobs. And what most people miss, and what you have reinforced for me, is they're not competing on the technology front. They're competing on the experience front.
Yes.
And these companies are saying to themselves, we are going to deliver a better experience. We just happen to use technology, automation, machine learning, whatever that might be for them, to create that experience. But ultimately, it is the experience the customer is seeking, not the use of technology. So the reason, and this is something I think everyone needs to sort of take the blinders off for a second and stop being so enraged. Open Door and Zillow and other companies like them that are trying to push the industry forward. I'm not going to compare them to sort of what Uber is doing in terms of displacing taxis, but to a large degree, they're trying to kind of create that experience that customers are looking for. And what I would do, I would spend my time thinking about what are the areas of focus they're obsessing over, and let me revisit the sort of how I handle the situation. Because ultimately, we all know, and the data supports this, that in most instances, you're going to sell your house for less money and less of a profit, than if you were to sell with a high quality professional realtor. At the same time, people are choosing that option because of convenience, because of the ease of use, because of the overall experience. So I think we can actually, if we stop hating these companies so much, we can learn a lesson from them. Let me have you take your expert hat off for a second, Joey. And I want to end with this today. And I want you to put your consumer hat on, because this is
Okay.
so important. That it's so fun for us to do this. First off, if you guys are loving today's session right now, do me a favor. I'm not monitoring the live chat, but just give it up for Joey. I have pages and pages of notes here that I'm writing down that I'm going to sort of think about deeply after today's session. And if you haven't bought his book, we're going to be giving away 10 today at the end of today's broadcast in the chat. If you haven't bought his book, I highly recommend it. It's something that will help reshape the way you think about delivering a great customer experience to help grow your business. And as Joey said earlier, it's about profit, it's about top line growth, and it's about your team's morale. Like, I can't think of 3 better things to focus on as an organization. So Joey, let's take your expert hat off and put your realtor hat on for a second. When I say the word real estate agent, what's the first word that comes to your mind? First word, Joey.
What is the first word that comes to mind when you
What's
say?
the first adjective that comes to your mind?
Oh, now it's going to be a grammar test, right? I'm going to have to come up with an
How would you
actual
describe
adjective.
a real? If someone's sitting next to you on a plane, Joey, and they say, "Hey, well, what do you do for a living?" "Well, I'm a speaker. I'm an author." And they say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" "I'm a real estate agent." What's your sort of initial emotional reaction to that conversation?
My initial emotional reaction to that conversation is get ready to be sold.
Mm,
Get ready to be sold. Get ready to have somebody find out what kind of house I'm living in, what kind of house do I wish I was living in, and how can they be part of that conversation and
yeah,
transaction,
yeah.
right?
It's and we're gonna do rapid fire here because we're
Sure.
running out of time. But it is a perception problem that we have to overcome, right? I think everyone here understands, like, when you say that, like, that's the mentality people have to have. So you have to figure out a way from a presentation perspective or a framing perspective or having a conversation to overcome that. What is Joey Coleman looking for in a realtor? If you're gonna sell your house tomorrow, right? You have lots of choices, and I'm sure you got people who are probably would be like coming to your door trying to work with you. And if they knew you, if they actually did scope you out, they'd probably try to up their game a little bit. But what are you looking for in a realtor? What are the qualities and the characteristics and maybe the things you would want them to do for you that would make you say, Joey Coleman, the king of customer experience, say, that was a good experience?
It's so crazy, Jimmy. I appreciate the question. And I want to preface my answer with saying the answer I'm going to give sounds really easy, but it's incredibly difficult.
Okay.
Okay. What I want is somebody who listens,
Mm.
period. If I say I want a 4-bedroom house with a, walk-in shower with a big backyard with a fence, and you show me anything that doesn't check those 3 boxes, to me, it says you're not listening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to push back and say, Joey, there is no house in your price range with a backyard with a fence, that's fine. I'm willing to hear that.
Yeah.
But if we don't affirmatively address the things I've told you I want and need, and you don't keep those in mind throughout the entire process, it leaves me feeling like I don't matter. It
Mm-hmm.
leaves me feeling like it's a cookie cutter solution. It leaves me feeling unheard.
Yeah.
I think most realtors could see a dramatic increase of their business if they would just sit with a blank piece of paper and say to their clients in the first meeting, what are the 3 things you're hoping to accomplish selling this house? Or
Mm-hmm.
the 3 things you're hoping to find in your new house?
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote those down, long form, right,
Mm-hmm.
by hand, turned it around, slid it across, and said, did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. With your permission, every time we go out to look at houses, I'm going to have this in my pocket,
Yeah.
in the car, and we're going to evaluate each house based on this. And then when I got them together to come to my car, the first time we were going to go look at some houses, what I would do is I would pull out the sheet that shows all the houses we're going to go to with 3 columns
Mm-hmm.
detailing the 3 things they had said,
Yeah.
with little check marks for them to check
Mm-hmm.
whether they think it qualifies. Not for me to check,
Yeah.
for them to check whether they think it lives up to that. If you're selling the house, same thing. I know I just used the example of buying a house
Sure.
because it's easier to articulate, but same with your selling a house.
Mm-hmm.
What are the 3 things you want to accomplish? Oh, we want to sell it in this time frame for a price in this range. Get your customers to give them a range.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Don't get them to give a single price. We don't want to anchor to that.
Yeah.
Right. But show that you're being listened to. And then, so first thing is to listen. The
Mm-hmm.
second little thing that would really move the dial, which I wouldn't ask for, but if they did, I would talk about in speeches,
Sure.
is do little things to personalize the experience. Do little things to customize the interaction. Do little things that surprise and delight me. That can be a thoughtful message, all gift, whatever it may be.
Mm. I hope you guys are taking notes. I'm taking notes here, Joey, and this is something I think that people don't understand is that what you said there, this idea of not making it feel like a cookie cutter experience is something that is so difficult to do when all you do all day long is the job. It's the curse of knowledge, right? The work that you put
Totally.
into it, you're just sort of like, oh, this is not that big of a deal, but this is the first time or only time they're going to be doing this over the next 5 or 7 or 10 years, or maybe even beyond that. Joey Coleman's the best-selling author of Never Lose a Customer Again. Joey, this has been an amazing interview. I really appreciate you jumping on today's broadcast with us. I know our audience absolutely loved it, and looks like they can connect with you online. Is that your Instagram handle there, Joey?
I will tell you, I will be the first to admit, you guys are pros at social media. I am not great at social media at all. So that may be an Instagram handle in there. But if you go to the Instagram, you'll see that I never post. Okay.
Okay.
That's a whole separate conversation we could have for another call about why. Here's the thing. I'll give you the 15-second version.
Sure.
I believe most people use social media wrong. I think social media should primarily be used as a listening tool and then a broadcasting tool. Now, I realize that may be in conflict with some of the curator philosophy, right? But the moral of the story is if you want to enhance your customer experience, you need to spend more time listening to your customers than talking to your customers. Okay. So I think there's a real opportunity. Best place to find me online is joeycoleman.com. That's Joey, like a 5-year-old you know somewhere, right? Coleman, Coleman, like the camping equipment, but no relation. JoeyColeman.com. As you said, the book's called Never Lose a Customer Again, which you can get on Amazon, anywhere you would buy a book. There's also an audiobook, which you've enjoyed listening to. If you've enjoyed listening to me, I can read you the audiobook. It's my voice narrating. So I can read you to sleep at night as you process this kind of conversation about how to create the kind of remarkable customer experiences that'll keep your customers coming back for more.
Thank you very much, Joey. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jimmy.